Welcome back from your tea break. In this session, we are going to have 4 presentations. I think the first presenter, is he available online or is not? Kalai, is he available online? All right. Okay, so we'll give him chance when he's available. He's abroad, I understand. So we shall start from with the second presentation. So the second presentation will be by Daba Abdissa. Daba Abdissa is going to make the presentation. Okay, so he will make a presentation to introduce briefly Daba. Daba, this is has a bachelor's and master's degree from Jimma University. He has published a lot of publications, and he's currently a lecturer in clinical anatomy, and he is a PhD fellow at Jimma University. So, Daba, podium is yours. Thank you.
Welcome back. My title is on parent-young communication on sexual and reproductive health issues and its associated factors. It was experience for students in Agarota, Southwest Ethiopia. This is my outline of presentation. As an introduction, according to WHO 2018, there are around 1.8 billion young people in the world, and almost 90% of them were in the developed countries. And the young age is the age which starts from 10 to 24 years, and it is a critical stage of rapid biological and psychological change that can later affect their adulthood. And it is an important period which laid good foundation for adult age later. Globally, greater than 60% of young people are living with HIV, from which 58% were acquiring new infections. And at this age are at high risk for unwanted pregnancy and consequences like dropout of school, the rejection from family and the community. And usually the main cause for this is the gap on sexual and reproductive health service. And usually this area is ignored. To solve this, parent-young communication on SRH issues vital in reducing risky behaviors. To inform them the risky behaviors and protective behaviors. And this, we can define parent-young communication as it's a fundamental process through which parents transmit sexual values, formation, beliefs, expectations to their children with the purpose of their sexual behaviors. Evidence suggests that 29% of premarital sex is related with unwanted or inappropriate parenting. And the reasons for this include socio-cultural norms, lack of knowledge, and parental fear. As a result, most of the young receive their sexual issues usually from their peers. That information might mislead them. A significant number of young people are affected by avoidable sexual and reproductive health issues. And according to studies, there are factors like parental education, adolescent age, living arrangements, parents' sexual reproductive health knowledge can affect their communication. And as the statement of problem, there are limited evidence on this issue, and the point prevalence also varies. In addition, there are inconsistencies among the studies. So the purpose of this study is to determine the magnitude of parental young communication with this associated factor. As a significance, this study serves as an input for designing appropriate interventions. When we come to methods and material, the design was descriptive, facility-based cross-sectional study among regular, secondary, and preparatory schools at Agaro town from April 2020. Sample size determined using T of 28.9, which gives larger sample size, and finally, sample size was 315. Sampling procedure, stratified sampling method was applied. The calculated sample size was proportionally allocated to each grade. Then the participants were selected using systematic random sampling using box. As data collection instrument and quality assurance, it was collected using pre-tested, validated, self-administered questionnaire, which is developed through reviewing several literatures, and it was pre-tested at Jiren school to ensure data quality. So it's collected by diploma nurses. As data entry and processing, the collected data was checked for errors and entered into IP data. For entry end, it was analyzed using Spaces version 20. And for assessing predictors, multivariates, logistic regression was performed. The model fitness and the assumptions of logistic regression was checked. When we come to result and discussion, the magnitude of parent young communication was 61.3%. As an operational definition, parent young communication was considered as communication between parent with their young on SRH issues like unwanted pregnancy, premarital sex, puberty, menstrual cycles, condom, in the last 1 year. And it was 61.3%, and it was this finding was in line with studies done in Yergalem and Mekele. However, it's higher than studies done in Dabat, Northwest Ethiopia, Robe, Southeast, and the Redawa. Those differences may be due to difference in social demographic, cultural difference, and assessing SRH service. For example, in Jimma, this sexual reproductive health was provided to community during PTP to the students. This might be a justification for this. In contrast, our finding was lower than study conducted in Ike and Walaita Soto. The possible justification is, for example, Walaita Soto study, there was difference in study population. The Walaita Soto included only female students with larger sample size. On the other hand, study conducted in Ike, more than 3/4 of participants were from urban areas. Moreover, study from Ghana reported higher percentage, 82.3%. The difference may be related with difference in sample size, sample technique, cultures. And on the other hand, when you see the topics discussed among parent and the young, the major topics discussed were premarital sex, puberty, style, STS, HIV/AIDS, while topic like contraception was discussed less. The possible justification may be in Jimma, majority of them were Muslim followers, and their religion didn't encourage them to use contraception like condoms, which can affect their discussion. So regarding this, we recommend qualitative study to explore more on to verify this study. Regarding the challenges for not discussing, like shame, cultural taboos, embracement, and parents' lack of knowledge are among the challenges. For instance, almost 3/4 of participants were discussing scared unwanted pregnancy, didn't discuss unwanted due to shame and the parents' lack of knowledge. It is consistent with steady dynamic. This taboo is usually sexual conversation was usually taboo in many African countries, including ours. And then moreover, yeah, parent-young communication on SRH is believed to be socially disgraceful, and the parents are usually not open and they are uncomfortable to discuss these issues with their children. When we come to the factors using independent predictors which come out from multivariate logistic regression, the first identified variable was educational status of parents. So statistically significant with communication. This could be due to educated parents could have better access to service information, improved perception on SRH issues. In the same manner, family size of less than 5 were statistically associated with communication. This may be due to small family size can have better access to discuss with their children. Finally, the final variable was having boy or girlfriend. The possible reason for this could be students who enters relationship may raise about a certain issue with each other, and they may discuss with parents for more information. As a limitation of study, first, the design is cross-sectional, so difficult to describe cause and effect relationship. Rather, the parent's perception was not studied, only the student, the structured questionnaire was student. The parent's perception was not studied. Rather, there might be due to self-reporting can be affected by social desirability bias. And in addition, qualitative study was not incorporated to dig more on this issue. As a conclusion, this study showed that almost about 2/3 of participants were discussed with their parents on this issue. The educational level of parents having family size less than 5 and having girl or boyfriend is associated with communication. The main reason for not discussion was cultural taboos, shame, and parental lack of knowledge. And as a recommendation, to solve this gap, necessary to give early education. Identified problems, fix taken from human university, sir, acknowledgements, the references or the link. The operational definition, I have said parent, young, adolescent. For parents, we consider parents as biological parents, foster or state parents, but didn't include elder siblings. Ever got SRH information, we consider it as participants who got sexual and reproductive health information in their lifetime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dava. You can take your seat over there. Okay, the next presenter is going to be Nakacho Saunet. Nakacho Saunet is going to present on respectful maternity care during labor and delivery. Nakacho as an MSc in midwifery. He has been working as a lecturer at the Brahman University, Department of Midwifery. The last 6 years, he has published 16 articles on international peer-reviewed journals. Nakacho, you can start your presentation.
Okay, thank you, moderators and the attending. My study's title is Respectful Maternity Care During Labor and Delivery, and its associated factors among women who gave birth in North Shore Zone Public Health Institutions, North Shore, Amhara region, Ethiopia. So here are my presentation outlines. So we will cover each one by one. So when I start from the background section, respectful maternity care it's an approach. It's centered on individual. It's based on principle of ethics and respect for human rights. And it promotes practice that can recognize women's preference and women's and newborns' need. Childbirth is a special moment for parents, for the family, and for the community. But it is also the time for the women to have an intense vulnerability to be exposed for disrespectful and abusive behavior while they are giving childbirth or during antenatal care on the postpartum period. So they have, so just we have in reducing the maternal mortality, not only maternal mortality and the child mortality also. The best practice just to reduce the maternal and child neonatal mortality is to improve the quality of the maternal health care service. So one of the key components of improving the quality of maternal health care service is providing the care through respectful way, which is respectful maternity care. So this is when we provide the care respectfully, it can increase a skilled birth utilization or utilization of the healthcare services for antenatal care, for delivery and the postnatal. So it is a strategy to increase the facility birth-based childbirth, and it can ensure the implementation of women's rights. So respectful maternity care is not only just providing the care in a respectful way, it is also protecting the human rights. So it's important to assure the women's rights and women's centered approach in maternal health care service. So there are some studies which has conducted in Ethiopia and in other country. When you see the study conducted in public health facility in 4 regions of Ethiopia, the respectful maternity care proportion is around 66%. And in this study, the study reports as health centers demonstrated higher respectful maternity care performance than hospitals. There are also another study which was conducted in Bahardar city and West Oromia, which showed around 57% and 35.8% respectively of the mother received respectful maternity care service. This is the conceptual framework. We showed the association between the independent variables with our outcome variable, which is respectful maternity care. Those independent variables are categorized under the socio-demographic variables, under the healthcare service related variables and obstetrics related variables. So they have no any multicollinearity in between the independent factors. So they are already all independent factors are directed towards the respectful maternity care. So this is adapted from different literatures. So why we inspired to do a study on respectful maternity care? Because just starting from the 2000, Ethiopia is going to reduce the maternal and neonatal mortality almost by half, but the number which is almost maternal mortality 412 per 100,000 live births, which is still too high. So we need to invest on the quality of maternal health care service. So one of the important and the key strategy to improve the quality maternal health care service is respectful maternity care service. So it is one of the government concern of Ethiopia. So, and the finding of this study also will help for the policymakers, for the government, for the non-government organization which are working on maternal health areas. So it is important to suggest intervention to be designed in order to improve the level of respectful maternity care in our health service. And the finding also important. It will help as an input to provide for the researchers to conduct further study. So the general objective of this study is to assess the proportion of respectful maternity care during labor and delivery and its associated factors among women who gave birth in the North Shore Zone public health institutions. So we have the specific objective, those are to determine the proportion of respectful maternity care during labor and delivery and to identify associated factors and specific objectives. So the methods that we used to do this study is the study design, period, and setting. We have used an institutional-based cross-sectional study at the public health institutions in North Shore Zone from October 20 to November 20. So the source population of this study were all women who gave birth at public health institutions were the source population, and the study populations were women who gave birth at the selected health institution in North Shore Zone were the study populations. So the sample size, sampling technique, and procedure, we had 776 predetermined sample size. We have used a single population proportion formula to calculate the sample size by using the proportion which has been done before, which is around 68.6%. So the final required sample size was 776. So there are around 10 public hospitals and 90 health centers in the zone. So we have selected 5 hospitals as we used those hospitals since they have different in their characteristics, in their case flow, in their facility. So we have used hospitals and health center as a strata. So we have selected 5 hospitals and 27 health centers randomly. The total sample size, so after we select those institutions, we allocate the total sample size proportionally based on the number of the births those institutions were attended in the preceding months of the data collection. So we have allocated it proportionally. So finally, the required samples from each institution were selected through a systematic random sampling technique with a key interval. So the number of delivery attended in each institution almost, which is similar. So the K was 3. We included those women who gave birth at the selected health institutions in North Shore Zone during data collection period. And we had also an exclusion criteria, but no one was excluded from this study, so not necessary to put it. To say the women received respectful maternity care, or the operational definition of this study, if they answered yes to all of those questions assessing respectful maternity care or the verification criteria, we can say the women received respectful maternity care. Those verification criteria has been categorized under 4 categories. Those are friendly care, abuse-free care, timely care, and discrimination-free care. Under those categories, there are components. So totally almost 15 questions available to measure respectful maternity care. So we used a pre-tested semi-structured questionnaire. Face-to-face interviewer administered questionnaire was used. And the data collection was done by certified trained midwives and supervised by 5 BSc midwives. And we control the quality of the data like by doing pre-test, and 1-day training was provided for data collector and supervisors, and the consistency and completeness of data was checked and data were coded and cleaned. So we used EP-info for data entry and SPSS version 2 for analysis. We used a logistic regression for to identify the factor which is associated with the outcome variable. So we interpret the finding by using the adjusted odds ratio at 95% confidence interval and with p-value which is less than 0.05. So we found the ethical approval letter from Deborah Brahan University, and letter of cooperation were obtained from the North Shore Zone and from Warada Health Offices. And we have taken an informed consent from the participant before the actual data collection. So when we come to the result, the socio-demographic characteristics of the study participant, a total of 776 postpartum women were interviewed in this study. So with 100% response rate, the majority of the respondents were married, and around 61.7% were lived in urban, and 65% of the participants were attended primary and above education. So the overall proportion of respectful maternity care during labor and delivery in North Chad were found to be 48.6%. This finding was lower compared to the study conducted in Bahar and on 4 referral hospitals in Amara. The possible reason for this variation may be those studies covered a limited area, which is most of them are done on the single city. The study were focused on facility located in the town, so relatively facilities around or in the town have relatively good respectful care service than the rural one. On the other hand, this finding was higher compared to the results of the study done in Addis Ababa and Iran. The reason for this discrepancy might be the study which is done in Addis Ababa was focused on only women who had gave birth through vaginal delivery, so they didn't include women who have done cesarean section. Included hospitals nearly equal to or over the number of selected health centers. So health centers and hospitals have different impact on the respectful maternity care, which is supported by different study which has done before. This is the table which shows the factor associated with respectful maternity care. Those are factors which are associated with respectful maternity care. So women who resides in urban were 2.6 times more likely to receive maternity care during labor and delivery, respectively, than women who comes from rural. This finding also supported by the other study which is conducted in Bahar Dar. The reason might be, even though rural women are vital, they had relatively compromised awareness, involvement, and capability for decision making, which makes them passive and non-empowered for the care they received. So this results to be less cooperative to build harmonious interaction relationship with the healthcare provider, so they may exploit for disrespect and abusive care. The other factor is women who were
Sorry,
multiparous.
Akacho, we are running short of time, so please wind up your presentation.
Okay. Women who were multiparous were almost 1.6 times more likely to receive RMC than the premium one. This result in line with this study. The reason might be women who had just multiparous women have experience of giving birth, and they knew what have expected from them and from the healthcare provider. So they can easily build a harmonious relation with the healthcare provider, so they receive the respectful maternity. The other associated factor is having planned pregnancy. So women who had planned pregnancy had over 2 times more chance to receive respectful maternity care. This is supported by the study done in Oromia. The reason might be having planned or timed pregnancy could inspire the woman to use a maternity health care service, starting from the antenatal care. This might increase women's positive cooperation with the healthcare provider. The odds of having respectful maternity care were 1.6 times higher among women who give birth in health center than in hospital. This study also supported with the study done in Oromia. The reason might be in the health center having relatively lower case flow than hospitals. This may be good for healthcare provider not to be tired and disrespect the laboring women. As a conclusion, this study identified that the proportion of respectful maternity care during labor and delivery was found to be low because all women should receive respectful maternity care. So 48.6% is too low. Factors such as urban residents being multiparous, having planned pregnancy, and giving birth in the health center were factors positively associated with the respectful maternity care during labor and delivery. So based on our finding, we have forwarded the following recommendation. So to the regional and to the zonal health bureau, they should address the respectful maternity care service to all rural and urban health institutions. To healthcare provider, we should improve the awareness of the women to have planned pregnancy. And we should provide respectful maternity care for all laboring women, regardless of their residency. And for researcher, it's better to conduct research on this issue, which can address health institutions all over Ethiopia. So the study has its own strengths and limitations. So readers should be considered to those limitations when they are reading this paper. So respectful maternity care was measured by using the validator tool, and we have taken a representative sample. But the limitation, since the design was a cross-sectional, it can't identify the temporal relation between the outcome and the independent variable, like behavioral upset of the healthcare provider with respectful maternity care. So the other limitation might be most of the variables are comes from the maternal perspective. We didn't see the healthcare providers factors, so because of the financial issue. So we would like to acknowledge the data collector supervisors, study participants, and the zone and the Braverhan University for funding this research. These are sample of reference. So thank you.
Okay, you can take your seat, Nagacho. Now the floor is open for questions and comments on the two presentations. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, you can start.
Thank you very much for the very interesting findings that you shared with us. My question is for the second presenter, Nagacho. I might have missed it, but I wanted to ask you, how was respectful maternity care defined in your study? And was it consistent with the other studies that you compared that were done in Addis Ababa and Bahar Dar? Thank you.
Second over there. Second at the back.
Okay, thank you. My question is for Nagacho, the second presenter. You say there is an inclusion criteria for all deliveries, respective mode of delivery. So how do you assess the mode of delivery didn't affect whether there is cesarean section or waiting time? Also, the waiting time in the area didn't affect the respective maternal care. The other is how do you use this multiparesis were positively associated with that of respectful maternal care? Is that only for the multiparesis have many period of disattachment with the clinicians, or the waiting time will be low for the multiparesis, so they didn't get many clinicians that doesn't respect the mother? So how do you see the waiting time in the area for that?
Okay, sir, Dr. Abha.
Okay, thank you very much for the nice presentation. I would give you a comment because when we study quality of care, it's difficult to measure in the absence of qualitative data. So my comment is it would have been better if it was either a mixed method or you have added some sort of qualitative data, because this is a provider and pregnant woman interaction. So it's difficult to measure it with quantitative data alone. Thank you.
Okay, and over there, the fourth at the back.
Okay, thank you very much. Both of the presenters, I have questions for Mr. Depa. From your justification, you have said that due to the presence of limited or unknown proportions, but it's very high. There are at least 38 studies that are studied on parent, adolescent, parent, young people, communication on SRH. So it is very difficult to say the prevalence is unknown. So the prevalence is already known. There are a number of studies in Ethiopia. And as a comment, you have also said that in your justification, due to the presence of variety of prevalence. So the presence of variety of prevalence cannot be a justification for primary studies because you cannot pull the prevalence. So it's better to omit the things. And the other thing is the factors for those adolescents, the factors for young people, the factors for users are very difficult. Just the sexual and reproductive health services or issues that can be communicated with parents for those children whose age is 10, 11 are quite different for 24 years. So it's very difficult to measure within the same variables. And it was better to conduct a qualitative study because we don't know whose problem is it. Is it a problem of the adolescent, the young people, or the parents? Some of the authoritarian parents may have attachment or good support with their children, but some children may not be volunteer to talk with their parents. So it's better to include qualitative study. For Mr. Lakacho, how could you measure respectful care? Of course, the other question is raised on that. How do you operationalize and how do you measure? There are, you have said that there are around 16 questionnaires or variables. How do you complete them? And you have already stated the socio-demographic characteristics of maternity respectful care. But respectful maternity care can be affected with environment, with professionalism. There are at least 3 parameters or pillars for respectful maternity care: the socio-demographic characteristics, the environment or the health facility, and the healthcare professional. So we don't have the health professional aspect. We don't have the environment. So it's better to say socio-demographic character, determinants of respectful maternity. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I think we have enough comments and questions. Now I'll give the chance for Java and Nagacho respectively to respond to the comments and questions.
Thank you for your nice comments and the information. Accept the comments and I will react to some. As a statement of problem regarding the evidences found as the study was done during 2019. That was one of the problem. During that time, there is no enough evidence. In addition, many of the studies were cross-sectional. Cross-sectional studies are usually point studies. There might be difference between the studies. On the other hand, there might be differences. There was no systematic review done as that area, as a country. So the prevalence of this problem is an input for that area. For that area, it is there is no study, and it shows the problem in that specific place, and there is no study done as that at our study area. Okay. The other on associated factors, we have used the uses in our study. Use from 15 to 24. Participants were used 15 to 24 as outcome variable. Then we have assessed the associated factor for this. Okay.
Nagacho.
Okay, thank you. Let me start from how you measure the respectful maternity care, or what was your operational definition? So as I have displayed the operational definition, respectful maternity care was measured by using 15 questions. Those 15 questions has been categorized under 4 verification criteria. Those are friendly care, abusive free care, discrimination free care, and like so. In those categories, there are 537 questions. So totally, there are around 15 questions that used to measure respectful maternity care. So in the question to say the women received the care respectfully, just the women should answer yes to all questions. So if the woman answered no, the woman has exposed or faced any disrespect or abusive care during the time of labor and delivery. So we have been measured it by using this tool. And this tool also consistent with the other study done in Ethiopia. So that is, it was valid and we used it without any modification. The mode of delivery, waiting time, the area, which means whether the health center or hospital. So we include those variables in our as our independent variables. But so since it is an analysis, all the independent variables may not get associated with the outcome variable. So but we have reported only the associated one. So from those, for example, the area, whether the health center or the hospital, the area, the place of delivery was one of the associated factors. But what does it mean by parity? Like when you say multiparous women have relatively good chance to receive respectful maternity care than preemie. Just different researchers also support this finding, and they are also reason out why multiparous may have a good chance to receive respectful maternity care because they have an experience to receive maternal health care service on the institution, so they know what would expected from them and from the healthcare provider. So they can easily communicate with the healthcare provider. So they can easily build a harmonious relationship between them. So they are less likely to be exposed for disrespectful and abusive care than the preemie individuals. So the important question comment, it's better to include or to add a qualitative method. Yeah, is very accepted comment. The socio-demographic, I reported only the socio-demographic, but when I display the conceptual framework, there are many independent variables which are categorized under the socio-demographic variables, healthcare service related variables, and obstetrics related variables. So those are independent variables, but because of the time of presentation and the guideline preparation of the symposium, we already report only the socio-demographic finding. But we have another finding related to the healthcare service related on the obstetrics related. So, but for the time being, we are reported only the demographic. So this is all. Thank you.
Just before closing the session, I have one question for Nagacho. You have said that there were differences between health center and hospital when it comes to respectful maternity care. Have you seen similar differences among the hospitals, for example, primary hospitals versus training hospitals like tertiary teaching hospitals, because they are quite different in their profile of as professionals, including medical students, interns, GPs, residents, versus primary hospitals having other category of healthcare professionals. Have you seen any difference? Just briefly.
Yeah, for this study, just we select the institutions in form of strata because institutions have different characteristics, different facility, different case flow, especially health centers and hospital. In North Shore zone, only the which is a large case flow hospital, the Debre Brahan tertiary referral hospital. So we took the Debre Brahan Referral Hospital without any, without comparing with other institutions. So the others are primary hospitals. So we select from them. So we have totally 5
So,
hospitals.
so any difference among
No, within the hospital, there is no any difference.
none.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to wind up the session. I thank both Dava and Nagacho for their nice presentation and the group for their active participation. Now I hand over the mic to my colleague for the other two sessions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this honor. I will be moderating two more exciting presentations. So I am already informed that one of the presenters session is pre-recorded, so we will be attending the record. So we have Mr. Kalayu and Johan. So Mr. Kalayu's presentation is pre-recorded one. So Mr. Kalayu is a PhD candidate in public health at Curtin University. He's graduated from Makale University with a bachelor's degree in public health, and he also has a master's degree from Addis Ababa University. He's has been working in the Robohan University as assistant professor. He has more than 20 research publications. So the organizers will assist us to attend the pre-card.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kalayu from Curtin University, Western Australia. I will present you today about on short interpregnancy interval and its predictor in Ethiopia. The term interpregnancy interval is the time duration between the birth of one child and conceptions of subsequent pregnancies. And the short interpregnancy interval has been reported as a risk factor, as modifier risk factor that poses adverse health consequences to both the mother and to the child. Different studies have shown in low and middle income countries where the short interpregnancy interval is associated with different types of maternal and child health outcomes, with low birth weight, with perinatal stillbirth, miscarriage, preeclampsia, and other maternal outcomes. This is because the short interpregnancy interval disrupts the physiological healing of the reproductive tract, and it also causes hormonal changes that might increase the risks of adverse pregnancy outcomes. So due to this reason, the WHO recommends women to wait at least 24 months before attempting their next pregnancies after the live births. So this, in this regard, a lot of studies have been conducted in Ethiopia on birth spacing, but these studies were used interbirth interval, which is the time duration between two consecutive live births, which is not an ideal proxy for IPI. The other reason is also these studies, or these previous studies conducted in Ethiopia, also have been restricted to women who have had subsequent births, which results in potential selection bias, because women who have had long interbirth intervals were excluding from the denominators. That results in exaggerated or inflations of estimated prevalence of interbirth intervals. So the purpose of this study was to estimate the levels of short interpregnancy interval, which is less than 24 months, and it is risk factors among women who have at least one child in Ethiopia. We use the Ethiopian mini demographic and health survey conducted in 2009 for analyzing this study. Women who gave their last births during the 5 years preceding the survey, that means 2015, 2019, were included in this study. Women who had their last birth within the last months, means preceding the survey, were excluded as they are unlikely to conceive again within the postpartum, within the 2 months postpartum period. So around 277 women were excluded because of this reason. So the final analytical sample consists of 3,682 women, which is corresponding to a weighted samples of 3,664 women. The event of this study was defined as the conception of subsequent pregnancy within 24 months following the last child or the last birth. And women who did not conceive within these 24 months or conceived after 24 months of the last birth were also considered as censored. And a weight Cox proportional hazard model was used to estimate the adjusted hazard ratio and the 95 confidence interval in this study. We also analyzed, or we also used sensitivity analysis for estimating the levels of short IPI by restricting to the women who had 24 months of follow-up time period, as we include women's within after 2 months of postpartum period within the 5 years period. So to see whether there is any difference in the levels of short IPI, we did a sensitivity analysis by only restricted to this who have 24 months of follow-up time period. So regarding this analysis, I have focused only on the main outcomes of the finding. I have not included the background because they are similar as this presentation is for Ethiopians. The background characteristics are almost similar with the other studies. So all of these women included in the study, around 218 or 6% had a short IPI. This is the result of the main analysis, and we also, like the main analysis, the sensitivity analysis also indicates that short IPI was 6%. So there was not any difference among the main analysis and the sensitivity analysis. Regarding the risk factors, this is the table which shows risk factors of short IPI in our analysis. So I've excluded or removed the reference values in order to present the table in one slide. So, for example, in the wealth status, the highest wealth is the reference, and in residence, R1 is the reference value. So all the reference values were excluded from the table for the sake of presenting the slide in one slide. So sorry for that. So this table indicated the most of the variables were associated with the short interpregnancy interval. However, the effect estimates, their effect estimates was not unprecise. It was unprecise. So, but this indicated that for example, rural and the low or women with low educational status were associated with the risk of short IPI. This could be due to the reasons of those women in the rural and low educational status where have low awareness due to the consequence of short IPI. And secondly, it could be also due to the lack of access to the health services. The other variable which have strongly associated with short IPI was the religion, especially the other categories like Catholic, traditional religions, and the others, which are the minority in religious following in Ethiopia, or was strongly associated with short IPI. This could be due to the cultural norms and practices, and which sometimes also associated with restricting contraceptive utilization. The other is women who have last births, female last births were also associated with having short IPI. This also could be associated due to the intention or the cultural practice, or due to the gender-based inequalities, or the intention to have a male child. This is also seen in many of the previous studies in the interbirth interval studies. The other finding is relating to the antenatal care, health, facility delivery, and postnatal care. This relates with reducing the short IPI is because is women they may get information for short IPI as well as contraceptive utilization during the maternal health services. But this study has its own strengths and its limitations, as it is the study was conducted in a community-based national representative data, which can help us to generalize the finding. And this study is the first study to estimate the birth spacing using IPI at the national level, instead of interbirth interval, which could result in different, it has different limitation using the IPI. So using IPI could minimize the limitations that could estimate using the interbirth intervals. This study includes women who had at least one live birth, which helps to reduce the selection bias and provides an estimate of the correct levels of short IPI. These are some of the strengths of this study, but it has also its own limitations. For example, the timing of the conception was estimating using self-reported completed months, which may subject to recall bias, and this recall bias may also impact on the levels of short interpregnancy interval. Secondly, some potential factors, as for example, breastfeeding, contraception use, and pregnancy complications were not included in the analysis. But if they were included, the analysis could have been different. So the other is it is difficult to assure the temporal relationship between the risk factors and the short IPI, as the data is collected in a cross-sectional manner. So it is difficult to assure the temporal relationship. And it is also possible to the potential residual confoundings could also still exist. So this the results. What is the lesson or take-home messages from this study? Given a lot of effort has been done in Ethiopia for improving the contraception use and reducing short interpregnancy interval, still insignificant number of women are also conceiving their subsequent pregnancy within the unrecommended interval or within the short interval. Although, as you have seen in the table of the risk factors, although the effect estimates were imprecise, the finding indicated that socio-demographic and access to the maternal health services determines short IPI in Ethiopia. So, for addressing the socio-cultural norms and the reasons behind the socio-demographic and access to maternal health should be improved. So, addressing the socio-cultural norms and practice through involvement by the community and the religious leaders who can help reduce the short interpregnancy among women. Secondly, reducing the inequality in access to maternal health service also important for contributing in reducing the interpregnancy interval. And we also suggest in further analysis to include the potential variables like breastfeeding, contraception use, and others, which were not included in our analysis. So this is all about what I have. If you have any question and suggestions, it's welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's give a hand for Alain. So we would ask the organizers if we can entertain questions, because as I said, this is a pre-recorded presentation. So our next presenter is Mr. Johannes. So Mr. Johannes' research title is Assessment of Contraceptive Demand and Associated Factors among High School Students in Gedio Zone, and it's a formative mixed method study. So Mr. Johannes is an assistant professor at Dila University. He has more than 10 years of working experience, has a master's degree in health education and promotion, and he's currently a PhD student in Jumma University in health promotion and communication. So please welcome Mr. Johannes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the chance. My title is Assessment of Contraceptive Demand and the Associated Factor among High School Students in Gedio Zone, South Ethiopia. It is a formative mixed method study. Background, globally, more than 50 million adolescents give birth in 2050, a number that is expected to reach over 90 million by 2035. If current trend continue, complications related to fertility and delivery are one of the leading cause of death among adolescent girls aged 50 to 90. Major initiatives such as global strategy for women's, children, and adolescents' health put contraceptive utilization as a major global health agenda. Adolescents, particularly the unmarried one, may disproportionately experience contraceptive demand due to their unique fertility preference associated with this age of life. Indeed, the availability of youth-friendly service is necessary to change the contraceptive behavior and may increase a demand for contraceptive. However, studies show that barriers to contraceptive demand, such as not avoiding, delaying, limiting pregnancy, and the lack of detailed contraceptive knowledge and misunderstanding jeopardize adolescent contraceptive demand. In addition, many adolescents lack sense of self-efficacy in their contraceptive decision, even if they are willing to do so. Despite the importance of demand factor, adolescent sexual and reproductive health research and program have focused primarily on providing use-friendly service, often missing an important step in understanding and meeting contraceptive need of adolescents. Furthermore, the calculation of demand for contraceptive is largely related with access and may overlook the unique demand factors. Thus, the limitation of demand indicators, quantitative finding should be complemented by a qualitative study that seek to understand the nuance for demand for contraceptive. Moreover, there is no adequate study done yet in this regard. Methods, the study area and the period, the study is conducted in Gedio zone in 6 high school from December 5 to February 8, 2021. Study design, an institutional-based cross-sectional design using mixed method approaches applied. Female adolescents who were randomly selected, sexually active, and attend school during the data collection period were study population. Research design for qualitative parts is ground theory, which is suitable for guiding development of important data and topics based on systematically obtained data. The study group also consists of selected students and health professionals from different participants. This is for the qualitative part. The dependent variable is the major variable, which is contraceptive demand, and the independent variables are socio-demographic factors, knowledge, communication with parents, exposure to media, and so on. Sample size determination, which is calculated from G-Power statistical software using two population proportion formula with 57 prevalence of contraceptive utilization among adolescents school attended in Ethiopia according to Ethiopian Demographic Health Survey. Out of that, P2 is 67% increase. This is the intervention. As I said from the topic, it is a formative study for the implementation. Therefore, the sample size is 1,697. However, as the study was a baseline survey for big longitudinal study, 424 sexually active females were included in this study. The saturation of idea that come to the discussion points determine the qualitative study. Data collection and the procedure. The study used a validated questionnaire that they adapted from Ethiopian Demographic Health Survey and other study. Before the actual data collection, health pre-test was performed on different sites other than the actual study site. In-depth interview with the students was conducted from 12 students. They are mixed with age, sex, at the same time grade level from 9 to 12, and whether they are at a natural or social science stream. Key informants were mostly health professionals and some counselors, school counselors also incorporated, and their number was 40. This is the measurements that we use, contraceptive demand, use of contraception, and knowledge, awareness, and so on. Analysis, the data were coded and enter using EP data and analyzed by using SPSS version 21 to control confounding variable with p-value less than 0.25. In bivariate logistic regression were entered into multivariate logistic regression. For qualitative parts, Atlas TI held with data coding and further analysis. The findings were categorized into teams and sub-teams based on important codes. Results, socio-demographic characteristics of the study population in the current study, out of 424 ever sexually active adolescents, only 224 of the study participants were sexually active during the study period. Regarding the qualitative study, 12 students and 40 professionals were participated. This is the socio-demographic characteristics of the students for the quantitative study. This is the socio-demographic characteristics of in-depth interview students. And table 3, this is the socio-demographic characteristics of health professionals for qualitative parts. Contraceptive utilization and unmet need. Around half of the participants, that is 50%, have ever used one of the modern method contraceptive. Among currently sexually active, 56.7% of the participants were currently using modern contraceptive, while 70.9% face unmet need. Contraceptive demand is the sum of contraceptive use and unmet need, which resulting in 74.6%. This is a figure that show contraceptive use and contraceptive demand. In this study, the qualitative study identifies the reason behind not demanding contraceptive. Accordingly, the issue identified was classified into 3 basic themes. These include barrier to desire, to avoid delay or space childbearing, barrier to desire to use contraceptives, and barrier to have agency. This means not having efficacy or self-efficacy to not use contraceptive. Under the themes, barrier to desire, to avoid delay or space contraceptive, the 2 main categories identified by in-depth interview respondents and key informants were economic insecurity and religious views. Economic insecurity, as a reflection of health personnel point out, some young people may deliberately do not use contraceptive to get pregnant, to secure their relationship if the partner has a job with a good salary. The other is religious view as a barrier to contraceptive use, since practically everyone in the study area values religious views and advocates for abstinence before marriage and view contraceptive as a bad thing. Adolescents who see contraceptive before marriage is considered as sinful, and every adolescent should be an example of others, and using contraceptive at such an age is a sin, a bad girl's behavior or a rude girl behavior, and a sin in front of God. Other factors, this is the model for the quantitative part. According to the quantitative study, 4 major variables were identified are predictors for quantitative study. Accordingly, those adolescents that live in urban areas, those adolescents have awareness about contraceptive, and those adolescents have habit of listening to school media. And adolescents usually make their own decision about SRH, were more likely to use contraceptive. This is the model, the final model. The qualitative part of this study supports the quantitative finding, the final model of the quantitative study. Accordingly, 2 major themes were identified: barrier to desire to use contraceptives and barrier to have agency to use contraceptive. Under barrier to desire to use contraceptive, we identify the following categories, or what we call sub-themes. These are lack of awareness, fear, social and cultural norms, and health workers' behavior. Lack of awareness, most of the key informants say that the students did not know much about contraceptive. They don't know much about contraceptive. They had not received reproductive health education. According to key informant respondent, he said, we usually measure adolescents' awareness about birth control during counseling, and they had no awareness about it at all. Fear related to contraceptive use. As key informant mentioned, students are afraid of.
Please go to your conclusion.
Okay. Conclusion. Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Okay, this is the limitation, as it is the cross-sectional study. It has its own limitation. The study excludes early age adolescents. The study excludes those adolescents out of school due to the sensitive nature of the study. Focus group discussion do not use. Conclusion, absence of reproductive health education in school was the cause of students' lack of awareness. Students' reproductive health intervention need to receive adequate attention in school media and other school club activities, like peer education, which makes them independent decision on reproductive health and air to generate contraceptive demand. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you for a very informative presentation. So this is time for asking questions and comments. Any burning question and comment? Okay, one. Just go ahead.
Thank you for the nice presentation. I have one comment, and as you have put it in your limitation, this is a cross-sectional study, and it cannot show whether there was cause-effect relationship. But in your conclusion, you have put it the absence of reproductive health information at schools is one of the as a cause. So I comment that that should be modified somehow if you are going to submit it for publication, because what you put as a limitation should not come to the conclusion the other way around. So it seems like a contradictory information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So over there.
Thank you so much. It was a very insightful presentation. My question is, so we talked about high school students, and that is age 17, 18, and also 16, right? I also want to know, because that was also my undergraduate paper, most of them have intercourse with older men, right? So power plays a huge role, power dynamics plays a huge role in terms of having the agency to decide about contraceptive use, be it condoms, be it other any so. So did you like in your study, it can be in your literature review, it can be in your conclusion. Also, did you try to see this, the power relation between them and also the older men? Because it also put them in a really, really high risk of they don't even have an agent. You want to ask that. The second question is, how did you had the chance, because you talked about health facilities, did you had the chance to see health facilities where they suited? It's not working. Okay. For students to go and have access to reproductive health services. That is, it can be a book like contraceptives. So I really want to know that. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for the wonderful question. Any more? Okay, Simran.
Thank you for raising an important issue, as well as for using a mixed method that is what is presented there. But as a ground theory approach, we expect a theory to be developed at the end of the analysis of qualitative data. And what have you come up with certain theories that describe the demand of contraceptive among this group is one of my question. The next question is, since you have used mixed approach, there may be a contradiction between the quantitative finding and the qualitative finding. Are the finding of these two approaches go in similar way or contradict with each other? How do you handle if it contradicts among your findings? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe one last question from.
Mine is just was regarding the possible limitation. They reported that nearly half of them were sexually active, but this may not be the actual, because they may not be free to declare information regarding their sexuality. So have you considered that as a limitation factor? They may not freely inform you during the interview the fact that they are sexually active, because sexuality issues are taboos. There may be desirability bias regarding revealing such information. So this could be a potential limitation as to the actual extent of those who declare that they are sexually active.
Okay. So, Mr. Johannes, over to you.
Thank you very much for the comment. I accept the comment related and raised by Doctor regarding to how you relate your limitation with conclusion. The other question about power relation and the self-efficacy issue, how you address this problem. Actually, this is a major problem. Most of the time, adolescents are in disadvantageous stage in many factors, in social, other knowledge, awareness, and they are immature to decide about their sexual life because they are not competent enough to defend themselves. Therefore, the main issue, as I present yesterday, we use peer education. Peer education as best method if we properly utilize and train those peer educators. Therefore, we empower them with increasing their self-efficacy, self-confidence, because in one way or other they are exposed in this globalization world. They are exposed to the circumstance. Therefore, being silent can increase the problem. Therefore, we have to empower them. We have to increase their self-efficacy using different techniques. I apply as a formative study. I apply peer education, and it shows a positive impact if we properly utilize it. The other issue, which is very important, health facility, how they can use contraceptive from health facility. This is the major problem. The qualitative part also identifies this. Health workers' behavior. As from the mixed study, health workers' behavior by itself is a challenge for adolescents to use contraceptive. Therefore, expansion of use-friendly services is very important. From my study, I learned that use-friendly service is inadequate in almost all parts of the country, and especially in particular in our study setting. Therefore, expanding use-friendly service which is equipped with different activities such as sports, playing, and the like can increase the utilization and respond for their demand rather than make them to visit the routine healthcare facility. This might be the solution. The other question in relation to ground theory, just like quantitative methods, we have in quantitative methods we have cross-sectional study, case control study, and the like. If we apply any qualitative studies, we have to use different the menus of qualitative study. Among that, ground theory is one. The other techniques for qualitative is ethnography, and the other techniques for qualitative is also there are around four methods. From that menu, I choose ground theory because ethnography and the rest are not appropriate. I have to choose one method. It is a must. It is a must. Therefore, as we assume, ground theory is not something very complicated. The assumption or the philosophy behind ground theory is when we don't have any information, regarding to some particular problem, we can apply. We can apply ground theory. The other, you cannot use case study, for example. The other method is case study. You cannot use case study. You cannot use ethnography. So the best approach, the other might be phenomenological study. The other technique is phenomenological study. These are the four major qualitative techniques. Therefore, if you don't choose and apply either of these techniques, your mixing and your finding might come up with problem during conclusion and discussion and the like. Therefore, ground theory is the best approach. We are not utilizing ground theory just for development of theory. Rather, we can apply when there is no adequate information in that particular area. When there is a bare environment, we can apply ground theory. I think I address your concern. The other issue is about mixing method and the contra. How is that not contradict to each other? When we apply during our research question, we don't assume from the very beginning that they do not contradict to each other, because our underlying assumption is they support. Maybe in the meantime, during our analysis and during our finding, we might come across. We are not guaranteed. Unfortunately, I am not facing a contradiction. Rather, I get a support from the qualitative, from both key informants and from the other in-depth interview respondent. Therefore, I respond your question. I think I address it. The other is the limitation part. One major limitation of this study is social desirability bias, at the same time recall bias, because this is a very sensitive issue, and adolescents might not answer the question honestly, or sometimes even they might wrongly say, I exposed. It depends. Therefore, this needs a care during data collection, giving appropriate training or supervision, and giving appropriate orientation during the questionnaire filling and so on. Therefore, we are not free from any kinds of bias. We are working with limitation. Therefore, I just take that, even if it is one major problem, I consider as a limitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So just to wind our session, the incidence of short pregnancy interval is considerable. Based on the first presentation, school-based education programs or awareness creation programs like peer education are making progress in individual decision making on adolescents and youth. So thank you for your patience. So this is the end of our oral presentation.